Hello again, this is John, and today I'm going to just have the camera rolling while I clean this new home sewing machine. This is late 50s, early 60s probably, straight stitch only, and so it doesn't have a lot of complicated mechanisms inside, but we'll pull off the plate, top cover. I guess this one's held on by a screw in the back. A lot of times these old ones flip open, but it's got the needle bar mechanism inside here that will oil, and then we'll get underneath and oil all the linkage up down below. So let's get at it. Most of these old machines have a couple screws on top that you just pull off, and that opens up the whole top end of the sewing machine to allow you to oil the top part. And voila. Well, as you can see, maybe. Okay. As you can see, inside there is almost nothing there. There is a lever over on this side with a cam, and then a connecting rod. Those both need to be oiled. And then if you follow down this forked rod down a couple inches, there's a sliding block that is the stitch length portion. So that needs to be oiled. Both ends of the shaft need to be oiled. And then if you look on the outer end of the hand wheel, there's usually a hole, an oil hole, where you put a drop of oil down there. And what that does is when you release the clutch mechanism, the hand wheel spins on the shaft, and so that oil hole here just oils that shaft, so when you're winding bobbins it doesn't wear the shaft out. Okay, now we'll pull off the single screw over here. I've already pulled the foot and the needle clamp off, so those are just missing right now. And we have little pieces of fuzz and things in there, but behind the light socket is the needle bar right out at the edge. That has a couple of oil areas on it, and then this whole linkage, it has some links, pivot points, so each one of those pivot points needs to have a drop of oil put on them. Actually, this sewing machine, if I start it up, it runs very well even without being oiled yet. Some of the ones that I get, they just make a racket first time I start them up because they haven't been serviced in such a long time. New home sewing machines, I don't know, I think they're made by Janome in Japan, where they were. And so usually the New Home brand is a very high quality sewing machine. At least back in the day they were. And you can look, even the motor bracket that comes over here behind this screw. Motor bracket is either cast aluminum or cast iron, whereas a lot of them are just stamped steel. So this is just a well-made machine. And I notice a little sticker on the side here that says 1 amp, so it's got a good sized motor on it. Okay, it's cast iron, so it's not light. Let's get to oiling. It's always a good thing to have good light. Now, to oil the shaft on the two ends, usually look for a hole. I see a hole right here, so I usually put a couple of drops on each end of the shaft. 2 drops there, and here's the other hole. And 2 drops in there. You can buy these oil bottles. They have an extending tube on them. It's very, very much more convenient than something else because you can reach way in and get just about anywhere with that long stem. Okay, the 2 ends are done. Do this cam here. A couple of drops on there because that has a big surface area. And a drop in this connecting rod. Sometimes it fills up with a bubble, so I try to help the oil down a little bit. It's so smooth. I just love these old machines. Okay, and a drop of oil on the needle bar, down low and up high because it's supported at both ends. And run that in. Now for the linkage, a lot of times there's a little hole on this linkage up here. You can see a little hole right there, maybe not. But a lot of times there's a little hole in the middle of the piece that you put the oil into. There's one there, there's one there. So we'll put 1 drop of oil there, 1 drop of oil there, and then rotate it around a little bit. This one I don't see any oil holes, so I just put it at each end. Now really what I should have done is dusted this off first. But I'll go in a little bit later and clean up the excess oil and wipe all the dust off. Presser bar goes through the cast iron, usually in one spot, so I put a drop of oil on there, and then up here where it rubs up on the top, I put another drop of oil. Poke through the spring to get it onto the shaft, and then at the pivot point where the lever pivots, this is the spring tension. Further down it goes, the more spring pressure it puts on the presser foot. Okay, one last thing I haven't done yet is this sliding block inside for the stitch length. It's an inch or 2 down from the main shaft. And then if I look down inside, this knob has an arm that goes in and slides along a piece. So I put a little bit of oil in there. Anywhere where there is friction between two metal parts is where you need to oil. Okay. I believe we are done with the top part of oiling. Reverse button. Okay. Let's take the plate off here. I've already removed the back screw, so I only have to take one more out. And I've taken out the bobbin and the hook and the plate for the hook. Oh, look at this. It says Janome on the bottom. So, and then on many of the parts it says Janome. That's how you say it. So let's dust this off a little bit. Okay, if we just run this a little bit, making sure that nothing is going to catch, we can see where all the pivot points are. One at each end of this shaft, each end of that shaft, each end of that shaft. Then we have another sliding block here, a cam there, and a lever that comes down from the top over here. These are tapered bearings here, one at each end. And then the foot mechanism there. Each end of this, we put a drop of oil in. This sliding block, put a drop of oil on each side of that. And at the pivot point. And on this cam. And then up on top we have another rod with a tapered, I guess a bearing surface on each end. And then this machine also has a drop feed capability. So this little piece here needs to be able to swivel independently from this rod. So we'll just put a little bit of oil on that. A little bit of oil on that. And on the feed mechanism we also have a roller down here. Lastly, we have a couple of rods. I think these are the last 2 points. So I just go along, I did those, I did that, those two, that block, those, I didn't get those. Maybe I did. I guess I did. And that we got, both ends of that. And that roller. And I believe we're done. So it doesn't really take a whole lot to oil one of these, actually. I mentioned this one up here on top, but I haven't done it yet. The hand wheel takes a drop of oil into that hole. A well-built sewing machine from the late 50s or early 60s is just, it's amazing, the quality that went into these. This has such little friction that even when the clutch is disengaged, it has a tendency to go around. So if I wanted to just hold it at some point, I can do that. Oh, I missed this bobbin winder. Has one spot to put oil. Thing to do here is to just take your time and look over the whole thing and make sure you didn't miss any spot. If you happen to have a manual that shows all the different places, you can look at that. Now that it's oiled, I'll go through and clean the whole thing up. It has little bits of scum around everywhere on it from years of sitting. But I will put it back together and put some thread on it and see how it goes. So there you have it. This is how I service a sewing machine. And actually I'll show you a couple of things. I use a very fine brush like this to get into small areas. I have a vacuum cleaner that I vacuum things out with. Old toothbrush always comes in handy. And then an assortment of screwdrivers, long ones and short ones, big ones and small ones. If I needed to take out, like if I find that the upper thread tension doesn't work correctly, you usually have a little screw on one side, and that takes a small screwdriver like this, and you just back the screw out a little bit and the whole mechanism comes out. Then you can take it apart and clean it. Another area to look at is the shuttle hook assembly. This a lot of times gets filled up with lint back in here, and so I brush that out and wipe it down to get all the old junk off. So now that we have that clean, we can look at the hook. This is an oscillating hook assembly. Some are rotary and some are oscillating. This one, as you can see, goes back and forth. And a full rotary hook would just spin just be a continuous rotation around. So we give this a little once over with the rag. Clean the old oil and lint off of it. put a couple of drops of oil, because this slides around the whole time you're sewing, and it's got quite a large surface area. And then it just kind of clips right in there. And then this ring, clean that up a little bit. That snaps on here and flips up and just gets held in place with those two little swivel clamps. And then I just go by hand rotating it around to make sure nothing hits. So the hook has a center post that the bobbin carrier rides on. So the bobbin cage or case, it is stationary and the hook is rotating around, so that center post rotates around. So we put a drop of oil in there. We can load our bobbin in. That looks like a Class 66 bobbin, but we'll just throw it in for now. Put the thread in and load the bobbin. And so far so good. One thing I wanted to point out, while I was putting this together, I noticed that the cover had these long spouts coming down. On the higher quality machines like this new home, they have extra features like this. So these spouts correspond with these little oil holes on the top. And if you didn't want to take the top cover off, you could put a drop of oil in each one of those, and the oil would migrate down the little tube and make it to where it needs to be oiled. But it's so easy to take the top cover off of one of these that I don't bother doing that. A lot of times these machines of lesser quality than this, they don't have these tubes, so it's just a hole through the cover, and then you have to kind of guess, well, am I hitting the point that the oil needs to get to? So it's just better, in my opinion, to just take the cover off and oil it the right way. And another thing I do when I clean a machine is I use these damp cloths that come in a bucket like this. You never know where these sewing machines have been, and so I just like to disinfect them, the whole thing. I wipe this over the whole surface, and it cleans off all the old grime pretty well. And so they end up looking quite nice when we're done. One place I haven't mentioned yet is the motor. It has, on these older machines, it's got a little oil hole on each end of the armature. And so I put a drop of oil in each one of those holes to oil the motor. One last thing I do is to check out how well the sewing machine sews after I do my cleaning job. Now this particular machine, it's an end, it loads from the left side, bobbin goes in here, and so I know that the hook is on the back side of the bobbin, and so the needle goes in with the flat that direction also. The flat of the needle needs to go on the side that the hook is on. If the hook goes on the left side, then the needle flat will go to the left. I don't know that there are very many sewing machines that actually have the flat go to the left, but a lot of these end loading machines like this one, the hook is on the back side, and so the flat goes to the right. And why don't we flip the little light on? Go one revolution to pick up the bottom thread, pull it up through, and I believe we are ready to sew. Let's just find a little piece of stuff here to sew on. I'll lower this top button down to a red line, which I presume is the normal place to have the spring tension. And here we go. The stitch length is all the way to the maximum, so I'll go down to, it's numbered 0 through 4, so I'll put it down to 1. This table I'm working on is just a card table, so machines bounce around a lot when they get going fast. So as you can see, it's nice and quiet, works very smoothly. Go anywhere I want on here, and it just works great. Now, one last thing I look at is the stitch quality. And I see the upper thread tension is a little bit light, and so I just turn that in a bit, and then I would try it again. Well, I thank you for watching this video of the way I clean and oil a sewing machine. I hope it's of benefit, and I get so much enjoyment from watching these old machines operate. They're just so smooth. Thank you for watching.